Welcome to Sex is Medicine, your number one resource for holistic sex education. I'm Devi Ward Erickson, and I invite you to join me every week for another enriching and powerful conversation about the intersection of sexuality, spirituality, pleasure, and personal growth. Each episode of Sex is Medicine is dedicated to awakening your heart and mind to the true purpose and power of human sexuality. Please join me on this journey of self-discovery as we explore the art of using pleasure as medicine to awaken, heal, and empower every area of your life. Sex is Medicine broadcasts every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific on Contact Talk Radio Network. You can listen to the replay and subscribe to Sex is Medicine on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. And now get ready for another episode of Sex is Medicine. Hey everybody, welcome to Sex is Medicine. I am your host, Devi Ward Erickson, back again with another stupendous episode where we explore the intersection of sexuality, spirituality, pleasure, and personal growth. I am back this evening with my panel of amazing experts, bringing it to you once a month, every month. Ask a Sexologist. We have in our upper left-hand corner, we have the beautiful and stupendous Karen Craig. My upper right-hand corner, we have Lucia Vasquez. Below me, we have Miss Rosie Bitts. And below me to the right, we have Sequieta Whitfield, and all of these amazing, gorgeous colleagues of mine. So honored and delighted to have you join us once again and share our wisdom and our knowledge and viewpoint, our lens, our informed lens with our audience. Thank you, audience, for sending us questions to answer for you every month. We so appreciate it. So whether you're sliding up into our DMs on our personal websites, or you're sending them to us at connectedauthentictantra.com. We so appreciate your questions, and we are delighted to be here to answer them. It gives us a lot of joy to support your sexual healing and personal growth. So this afternoon, we are going to start with a question about anal pleasure for men. So these are those male-identified people. So this is a big topic and a big issue because for those people who are born with penises, you have an organ or a gland that when stimulated can bring you tremendous pleasure. And yet this organ is most easily accessed through your anus. So that can be intimidating for many people. So there's this rub. That's the right word, no pun intended, but there's this conflict between this pleasure, but also this shame because of the location of where this pleasure stems from. So we are here to alleviate that, to help rid you of all shame of accessing your birthright to pleasure, wherever it happens to show up on your body, whether it's in your anus or in your penis or on your toes, wherever it arrives. We want to celebrate that for you. So our question this evening is, okay, so I enjoy anal sex, pegging. How do I introduce this to my wife? She thinks it is gay. That's a deep question. So I'm going to invite one of our wonderful experts to get started by answering that question. What are your thoughts? Who wants to address this first? Sequieta. So for those of you who can't see, Sequieta's making happy gestures with her fingertips. So she's excited to share.
I don't even know where to start. I personally love the act of pegging.
Damn.
So let's
woo, woo, woo. So Sequieta's like, bring it. Just line them up for me. I'm ready to go. There ain't no shame in our game. Let's do this.
It's my game. And so I would say to this young man, this old man, whoever this person is that I would have the conversation off-site, maybe, in a neutral place where he can just express what his interests are, what intrigues him about anal play, what he's read or heard about prostate massage and the pleasures that can give him, exploring the whole aspect of rimming, or some people say, eating ass, or, whatever that turns him on. And just coming from a place of just conversation rather than, hey, can we do this? Mm-hmm. Because if she or he is not open to that, in this case, it's his wife, if she has certain reservations around it, or taboo thinking, or it's just like, she doesn't know how to approach it. Mm-hmm. I think coming from, and this has been my experience, coming from just a place of conversation, this is what I like to explore, and talk about it from a non-threatening place. Yeah. Then it gives way, it opens the door for them to carry on the conversation further, because sometimes it can't just go from 0 to, yeah, let's go. Yeah. Sometimes in a relationship that's long-term or even short-term, but that type of bridging that gap from this is what I like and I'm not gay to this is what I like and I'd like for you to join me in this pleasure can take a while. Yeah. Can take a while, days, weeks, months, depends on where they are in their own pleasure game. Now, if their own love life, their own sex life is active and at a level where, yeah, they want to add to it, then it may be an easier, shorter time frame. But if they're going from a for lack of a better word, like missionary position once a week to let's have anal play, that might take a minute.
That might be a big leap. Yeah. So you're suggesting having a conversation about it. Context is important. So not like while you're making love, like, hey, let's peg. Or even like in the conversation, like, hey, let's try this tonight. This is new crazy thing. But like, hey, let's explore this intellectually. Yeah. Let's explore it with a safe space around it in a safe container, and just discuss the pros and the cons and views and all of that without any pressure to act upon it right away.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that, because it'll also give his wife the opportunity to express what her reservations are. So are her reservations that maybe he really is gay and prefers to have a man over her, and so then feels like kind of threatened in the relationship, or, does she have like religious views, that would be proscribe having that kind of connection, like what are her issues around it? So it would give him an opportunity to talk about his pleasure and why he desires it and what her issues, and give them both the opportunity to pose questions. If they've been married a long time and then he just suddenly kind of arrived one day, oh, I want this, then she might be wondering, well, kind of where'd that come from? And, so yeah, I love the idea of starting out with conversation, but not in bed.
Right. And because there's so much more that goes to that, there's the choosing of the toys, the size of the toys, the starter kit, whatever it is that, you do what do you call it? And when you start investigating, you recon. Yeah.
Recon. Right. Yes.
Your reconnaissance mission.
Going on a deep dive. Literature as well into it, right?
What did you say, Rosie?
Bring some literature in as well. So starting a conversation, but maybe having a book to be like, hey, would you be willing to read this with me? And we can just sit up every night and just read and explore and discuss. So it's not just this scary concept of like, if this is a wife that is used to a certain type of sex and maybe she's not been exposed to a lot, this can be pretty scary. So instead it's like, let's get some information that's outside of our own brains. We can discuss, or even come to somebody like us, right, who is like a safe person to discuss this and start to explore the pleasure. And I would say also, it's always easier for me if I have a partner who wants to do something that I'm feeling unsure about, is to explore my pleasure. Right, like, this is something that turns me on. Are there things that might turn you on that we're not exploring? What else can we be doing?
And keeping in mind that anal play is not just for men, for lingam owners. So the anus is the second highest concentration of nerve endings. The first being the genitals. We'll say pleasure sensitive nerve endings. The first being the genital, what we think of as the genitals, but your anus is considered in some systems part of your genitals, right? And it is a pleasure zone. And we are conditioned to have a lot of shame around it. All genders, all anatomical expressions in this society. It's like, it's dirty, poop comes out of it. You're not supposed to want to put anything in it. There's a lot of social pressures, it's a one-way street, nothing goes in. So there's a lot of psychological stuff to overcome in terms of embracing our anus as a source of pleasure, as well as physical things that we may need to overcome, and from toilet training or potty training, or just lack of use and not really understanding how to approach the anus as a pleasure organ or a pleasure zone. So I love what you guys have said in terms of like education. Like number one, like education is for the mind to understand what the heck is happening and to relax about it so that the body can relax and receive pleasure and sensation. And so as everyone said, there's tons of videos. We've got a video on Sex is Medicine, a YouTube channel about how cultivating anal pleasure. I think it got censored. It's still up, but you might have to dig for it a little bit. One of my favorite books for helping the male mind understand its relationship to anal pleasure was a book by Dr. Charlie Glickman. I can't remember what it's called, Exploring the Prostate. He wrote it with another practitioners, and I'm sure there's many more books on anal pleasure and that sort of thing. But what I loved about the book with Charlie Glickman is he really explored the psychological resistance to playing with the anus, and whether that psychological resistance is from the male, from the lingam owner, or whether that psychological resistance is for us yoni owners who are just like, ooh, that's gay, because we simply haven't heard anything about it. And just want to say that, like, yay gay is awesome. And understanding how if we're in a heterosexual relationship with a man, we may not want to view our male partner as gay, because that would have implications outside of our marriage. So implications for our marriage. So what are your thoughts, Lucia? Anything you want to chime in here in terms of how this person, this lingam owner, can express or start discussing their enjoyment of anal stimulation with their partner?
Yes. I was just going to add that, I do a lot of the hands-on body work, and I do sessions that promote awareness in your pleasure zones. And so for lingam owners or penis holders, that's definitely a huge topic, and a lot have come because at home they simply don't feel safe enough to be able to express their desires and their wants with their partner for a variety of reasons, and so I provide then a safe environment for them to explore. And so when I ask, a lot of times I'll ask and I'll say, is this something that you feel comfortable with, at home? And a lot of times the answer is no, they're not able to express. And it's because, they feel they're going to be shamed, right? And they don't know how their partner is going to react. And I would say that that the number one reason behind it for on both parties is that one thing, which is the education. Both a lot of times don't know how our system is set up and to be able to receive those sensations, which Davey, you pointed out with the nerve endings. And so the nerve endings are the reason why we are able to feel those sensations there, and it's all connected to our genitals, and so even for the women or the yoni holders, the vulva owners, you can even, be able to experience a variety of orgasms just from hitting in that one particular zone. And a lot of women don't know that, right? And I didn't know that. I just knew that it was a good place and it felt good. And I don't care why, but it feels good, right?
all judgment for the sake of pleasure. Who cares about the judgment? I'm here for the pleasure.
Right. Exactly. And for me, it was those kind of orgasms that were my most pleasurable, along with the clitoral ones, more than anything.
I pause you there. So what you're saying is that your anal orgasms were actually more pleasurable than your vaginal orgasms or your clitoral orgasms?
No, that those were the two main ones for me before I was educated that I could have. The only two that I could have was anal and clitoral.
So that's huge, because there's a lot of shame from yoni owners that I've heard that's landed in, in my message boxes and whatever. A lot of shame for yoni owners who are able to have anal orgasms but not vaginal orgasms. So Lucia, do you want to dive into the nerve pathways and why that might be a thing? Why they might have more easier orgasms via the anus than the vagina?
Well, because okay, wait, I'm sorry. Let me hear that question again.
So the nerve pathways. So remember how like the pelvis is innervated, and there's actually a physiological reason or an anatomical reason why some yoni owners may have easier anal orgasms than they do vaginal orgasms.
Well, yeah, that's because the nerve endings, the pathways of the nerve endings itself are connecting down to our genitals, right? So they're innervating those areas. So when you're indirectly hitting it from a different angle, you're going to be able to hit those pleasure zones, even like your the anterior spot or even your G spot area. You can hit indirectly coming from the backside.
Beautiful, beautiful. So it's the stimulation of those nerve endings. So that's really, in terms of having a conversation about like, how do we introduce this to our partner? Like really what we're talking about is, hey, I have some nerve endings that would like to be stimulated in this other orifice.
Exactly right.
Would you like to help me stimulate these nerve endings? Because I can't reach them too well myself.
Right.
Yeah. Ultimately.
Yeah. And so, one of the things that I always tell them is to, because it is a very touchy subject for most, is what you all have mentioned is to have a conversation about it. And even I have definitely suggested to, look at some videos, some educational resources, and point them out to your partner in this conversation and show and become more educated about the reasons why these are pleasure zones for everyone in general.
Yes. And I would also just add to this conversation, circling back to what Sequieta was sharing earlier, which is that it can be really hard to go from, your regular penis and vagina sex to, I want to be pegged, right? That might be a big leap for your wife. And so, a suggestion might be exploring prostate massage first or anal massage before having her strap on a dildo, because just that might be intimidating, right? She may be totally down to stimulate give you a prostate massage, but putting on the strap on might be a bit much for her starting out. So loving, that this gentle approach of exploring different educational materials, watching videos, get informed, doing something together, like making this a fun exploration as a couple. Like, let's explore this whole other realm of nerve pathways, nerve endings that we can stimulate in both of our bodies. And then let's see what happens.
And I would also point out that when you talk about prostate massage, that massage of the prostate is actually health giving, that there are health benefits to the prostate being massaged, both from an Eastern perspective and a Western perspective. So moving stagnated energy, but also like sort of flushing out like toxins from the prostate, and trauma energy and all kinds of things are held there. Absolutely. So there are also some benefits along those lines.
Beautiful. Yes, exactly. So if you want your husband to live a long time, massage his prostate.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Yay. Okay. So anything else we want to add about pegging and anal play? We approve 100%. We want to support you. We suggest you do it. Reach out to any of us to support you in that. Watch videos, read books.
May I add one little thing?
Absolutely.
There are some very tasteful porn videos on pegging. as well. So.
Okay, well, where can those tasteful videos be located? Because there's a lot of untasteful ones. So let's talk about where can you find them, Sequieta?
Without throwing myself under the bus.
That's too late.
The pegs out of the bag.
The pegs out of the bag. I've just found a couple on Pornhub that just because.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So a couple on Pornhub. We, at some point we'll have to expand out our sacred porn, links kind of thing, resources, because they're there.
Yes. They are there.
They are there.
Maybe we should create a Google Doc and just, start adding links to them so we can share them with all of you after these, because it's important. Because again, porn is a sensitive topic because it's controversial, because there is a component of it where it's rooted in ignorance, it's poor modeling, it's all of that stuff. There's a component to it, but then there's also this really wonderful sacred aspect to it, and it can be an incredible support for couples wanting to learn and explore and expand their horizons. So the way the porn is used, it can be used for good or it can be used for ill, and it's important for us to have resources that meet our needs for integrity, I think, in terms of our consumption. Yeah. Yay. Okay, which brings us to our next question. Can Tantra help heal porn addiction?
And I addressed this question came across my feed, and she mentioned, this was from a wife regarding her husband, and she said that he has a history of porn, masturbation addiction, and this was a new one for me: intimacy anorexia.
So that means not wanting to connect. Is that the way we're interpreting that? So it would be aversion. So that would be attachment trauma.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So having aversion to actual intimacy with another is usually indicative of wounds, relational wounds that we have as children. So what do they call it? Avoidant attachment style?
Yes. Okay. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So anything else on that question, Sequieta?
He just wanted to know if Tantra could, help with his addiction.
Okay. All right. Well, I believe that we've all had experience with this. I'll let you guys go first. What are your views? What have you seen?
No, go ahead, Rosie.
Oh, thanks, Karen. So I view it as like any other addiction, right? And there really is, when you're dealing with addiction, it's about a lack of connection and community, actually. Right? People don't become, and this is there's some beautiful new cutting edge information about addiction that's happening right now. And Gabor Mate is pushing a lot of this as well, about really healing what is underlying the addiction, because people don't get addicted to substances. Like, there are addictive substances.
Yeah.
People have a need for connection that is missed. They have a need for community. They have a need for intimacy, which he also has, like that double whammy of having, if he's, it sounds like maybe even an attachment disorder. Like, all of us have different attachment styles, but you can have an attachment disorder where you really never attach to anybody.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where I would go. And what I have found with working with clients with porn addiction is it's actually, I remember the first man I worked with porn addiction, it was so much easier than I expected. I was really worried. It was early when I was practicing Tantra, and I was really worried. I was like, whoo, when he told me his story, and I was like, yeah, well, let's work on it. Let's see how it goes. And having consistent connection was a huge part of the healing. Yeah. Right? Just being able to have a safe place to come and to talk, having the meditations that we offer was a huge part of the healing, a different type of connection, journaling, a different type of connection, right? All of this. And he, in the time that he and I were spent together as had him as a client, he never healed his relationship with his partner, but he came to a place where he no longer needed to use porn in the way that he was. Yeah. It's not something he was reliant on anymore, because he had found first a connection through me, but then ways to connect within himself.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So prioritizing connection as the antidote to the addiction, And the tantric methods that we teach, I can't speak to all tantra, right? Because that's the thing. It's such an umbrella term. And so I don't know what your tantra yoga practice looks like. So I can't say whether or not it's going to be healing. But we can say that with the methods that we use, I think all of us have experienced out in the field teaching people, exactly what you described, Rosie. Like for me, walking a lingam owner through the methods of self-connection, yogic breathing, solo, self-masturbation, sacred self-pleasure, like that in and of itself, I has been so transformational for so many men. And I think that one of the root causes of porn addiction specifically is having that our innocent connection to pleasure as children severed, being told that good boys don't touch their penises, and growing up in this culture of sexual shame where they need to hide their masturbation, where they need to do it as quickly and quietly as they possibly can. And the whole focus of it is just to bust that nut. And then, it's like pressure release. It's not cultivating this beautiful, juicy relationship with your body and your genitals. And so teaching lingam owners methods to reclaim their right to having a sensual relationship to their bodies, an essential relationship to their penis and their groin and their testicles and all of that area. So instead of it just being this performative, like I'm going to beat you until you squirt, right? I'm going to be present with you and breathe into you and touch you and talk to you and just be present with whatever sensation arises. And I've literally watched men cry tears of joy and anger and rage that their right to their own sensuality was taken from them as young boys. And so I really believe that is one of the keys to antidoting this addiction to porn, because it's also an addiction to that one type of climactic orgasm. It's not like they're watching porn for 2 hours and like cultivating their full orgasmic potential and having non-ejaculatory orgasms for 2 hours and like that's usually not happening. Usually it's like jacking off as quickly as you can and having your climactic orgasm as quickly as you can before you roll over and fall asleep, right? And so that's a very immature relationship to your sexuality and immature understanding of your sexual potential. So I believe that the reframing of what our sexual potential actually is as human beings is part of helping to heal that the epidemic of porn addiction, what we call porn addiction in the society. What are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that it just all, everything that you said, it brings a huge disconnection to yourself. And so, with authentic Tantra, it's about bringing yourself back to the body, right? And being present and aware and kind of just retraining your mindset and rewiring your brain to love yourself again, in a kind and in a safe and an empathetic way, and being able to release whatever attachments there were, and allowing the body to just do its job. When things arise, you're given the tools to be able to walk through them, right? And so you're restoring you're restoring your pleasure back to yourself versus it being in a way that's more manipulative and not authentic to yourself, right? And it's also it's about learning, you're learning how to gain your power back instead of losing your energy. You're learning how to restore and be able to retain the power and the energy that you have.
Beautiful. So it becomes a sacred practice. Like that's the thing, sacred masturbation. Like it is like sacred self-pleasure. It is a sacred act to, like, God gave them to us for a reason. Nature gave our genitals to it. There's a reason that we can reach them. There's a reason for that. It's a good reason. Okay. Anyone else wants to add to at least authentic Tantra yoga? I don't know about other styles of Tantra, but at least what we teach, the 4 pillars of healing, meditation, movement, connection, and pleasure, can absolutely help address and antidote the root cause of porn addiction.
Yeah, I can just add that one of my clients who was addicted to porn, so much so that he watched porn 3 and 4 times a day. Yeah, and specifically to help go to sleep. And once we started doing, especially fire meditation, attachments, that insecurity, once we started working with the OAP process, he learned how to reframe, you know, his mind-body connection, that it wasn't just a tool to do that, you know, it was actually to reconnect with his own pleasure. He stopped watching porn as much. Let's say it would get down to once a week, which blew me away.
That's huge.
That's huge.
Yeah, that's huge.
Another client stopped relying on his, what he called his spank bank.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's that when you watch porn, you store it under, I'll use this image to masturbate to.
Mm-hmm.
And so once we were able to like cut that connection to those images, and he tuned into his body, then he became much more self-aware of his own pleasure.
Because that's the key, is that attunement to our own bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's the thing that I saw with the men that I worked with as well. It was the coming back home to their body that, again, was restorative. So instead of this thing out here or in your imagination, it's actually connecting with your body and feeling it and tuning to it. And that can also be part of the resistance and the obstacles. If we have a lot of trauma in our bodies, it's really uncomfortable to be in them and to be present in them until some of that trauma dissipates. And that's why some of the yogic methods that we teach are so important. So I just want to put a pin in or dig into the 2 methods that you mentioned, the fire element to help purify attachment. So the Tibetan 5 element practices, each of the elements corresponds with a different emotional poison, is what we call, and attachment is woven into addiction. So purifying the psychological attachment to addiction and the emotional stuff that causes us to be attached. But then also you mentioned, Sequieta, OAP, which is what we call the orgasmic awareness practice. And so that's a yogic method of working with a specific breathing method during the process of stimulation, using specific styles of stimulation to help rewire the autonomic nervous system to relax and receive pleasure and expand our potential for pleasure, as opposed to, again, being attached to this climactic orgasm. Yeah. Beautiful.
I mean, just being present in that way, like sometimes people use, just like any other addiction, use masturbation as a medication.
Yep.
So they're trying to meditate, whether it's anxiety, depression, any whole array of things, sort of that like hit, that chemical hit, that and those endorphins and all of that. Like that helps to medicate, and even like Sequieta was talking about, to go to sleep. Yeah. So a way to relax and calm themselves. So learning other means of doing that can be so supportive, like working with ocean breath and breathing forms that help their whole nervous system to relax instead of like needing that. And then also learning, we talk about pleasure, pleasure is medicine. Yep. And masturbation like that, sort of like what you call, Davy, that sneeze, that orgasm that's really sort of this hit of chemicals as opposed to genuine pleasure. And so really being able to learn how to connect to pleasure and all the different forms of pleasure, so that their bodies and their tissues are really being sort of marinating in all these pleasure chemicals. And so they don't need to go to that as the go-to to achieve that.
Yes, beautiful. I love that. Marinating in pleasure chemicals. Let's do that. Marinate.
I like that. Pleasure chemicals.
Let's marinate. Yeah, I'm going to add that to my chicken. That's my special sauce. I do just want to say this, that there's absolutely nothing wrong with masturbating or self-pleasuring in order to fall asleep. But what we're suggesting is, if you have an addiction to porn, like that may not be the best remedy, but also it's not necessarily, when we're talking about lingam owners, it's not necessarily the ejaculation that is going to cause you to fall asleep. It's the orgasm itself that's relaxing, and it's orgasm itself that's restorative. So for you guys, learning to separate orgasm from ejaculation and ejaculate infrequently and by choice, having choice over when and how often you ejaculate is incredibly empowering, and still being able to have orgasms without ejaculating. Now that is something you want to fall asleep to. I'm just saying. And your partner too. Your partner will want to fuck her to sleep, boy, let me tell you. Knock her out. We're all nodding because we know, yes. It's happened, yes. This is true. So true. All right, so let's move on to our next question. Okay, so I'm going to go to one that came into me. So I'm wondering how can I receive an orgasm from penetration? I've never received an orgasm from penetration, and only from clitoral stimulation. So the clitoral glands, which is, we know that the clitoris is in most of it's internal, but when most people say clitoral stimulation, they mean the glands. Whenever I'm penetrated, it's like I really don't feel anything, but the thing I do feel is not pleasurable. It's just like I'm being touched internally. Also, I'm in a same-sex relationship, both yoni owners, and this has always been a problem for me, even when I was in a heterosexual relationship. How can I receive pleasure from penetration? Well, this is an awesome question, and one that we love to answer. So I will hand the mic to you guys to support this wonderful yoni owner and understanding more about their bodies and how they can have vaginal orgasms. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we have a lot of common there. Yeah, I would say that it sounds like, that there's a lot of numbness, and, something that I myself was experiencing before I went through training and got educated. And this was like when in my younger years in my 20s, where I went through a number of years of feeling the numbness. And what I did not know that there was a connection from the traumas that I was holding in my past to my sexual functioning. And I went through many, many years of talk therapy, and it was never addressed. That connection was never, ever addressed. And so I was completely lost with that portion of it, simply because I just did not know. I was not trauma informed at that time. And I didn't know that could be related to the reasons why I was not being able to orgasm in those ways. And so once I sought, out the training and the education behind it, that's definitely one of the things that I love teaching now, is educating about, the different types of traumas. And, everybody, we all hold on to trauma in different ways, but just understanding that it can and it does include the sexual functioning, and we may not even know it, right? And we don't have to. It's how our body is taking it and perceiving it, and it's something that we cannot talk our way out of, right? It's something that's actually held in our nervous systems and held inside the body in the actual tissues of our bodies. And so, I strongly encourage those to, get the education behind that and seek out, what it means to heal by way of using somatic healing, right? Using breath, touch, and awareness to get through the blocks that are there, that are being in the way of us being able to access our full, pleasure potential.
Beautiful. So you're saying that one of the issues, one of the reasons for a lack of sensation may be that she's storing trauma. She's holding unresolved trauma in that area of the body, or it's manifesting in that area of the body. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. That's how it was for me. It wasn't until I started to learn about that and I actually started to explore myself with the tools of authentic Tantra that I was able to then release it. And was like 20 years later.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Trauma, when it's unresolved, It just lives there and festers and has potential to create illness and absolutely creates dysfunction, dysregulation. What are your guys' thoughts?
I would say often, from my experience, it's lack of full arousal.
Yep.
Yeah.
You really need to be, unless you're, at this point, I've done lots of yoni exploration. And so I can have some pretty easy vaginal orgasms, often more easily than I can have clitoral orgasms. But, when I was starting out, I had to really get to that full place of arousal and engorgement. And we forget, when I'm talking to my clients, I tell them, you have a lingam measure, not that it's actually totally accurate, but with lingam owners, you see, are they getting an erection? Do they not have an erection? Not that they can't experience pleasure without an erection, but with yoni owners, we forget that we actually have all of this erectile tissue that takes about 40-ish minutes to fill up. And once that erectile tissue is full, and we've had that time of 40-ish minutes to get aroused, what's happening internally is, first of all, I think, push to the forefront those nerve endings so we can get to them a little bit easier, but also we're juiced up, we're ready for some penetration.
Yep.
And you can ask your yoni, you can actually put a finger or put a dildo if you're playing with a partner at your yoni, and if she's interested in being penetrated, she's going to suck that right in.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because my first intuition in reading this was, oh, you're probably not fully engorged. So like understanding our anatomy is so huge in understanding why our sexual experiences are the way they are. So, number one, the vaginal lining has few nerve endings, unlike your clitoral glands, which has many thousands of nerve endings. So of course you're going to have more sensation from your clitoral glands right off the bat than you are your vaginal walls. And that internal erectile tissue takes 40 minutes to engorge. So much of our sexual education in the West is patterned after the male ejaculatory orgasm. So there's this, fast arousal, you get hard, you stimulate for 2 minutes, you have an orgasm, you ejaculate, you're done, right? That's the whole Masters and Johnson 4-stage arousal, blah, blah, blah. For yoni owners, it's a lot different. If our sex education was patterned after the pattern of female sexual arousal and desire and, all of that, it would be very, very different. So ensuring that internal erectile tissue is fully engorged. So you've got at least 40 minutes of stimulation happening, whether that's stimulation with a finger, a tongue, it can be stimulation with a penis, but it just has to last 40 minutes, not 2 minutes, right? And then that engorgement is going to, as Rosie said, push those nerve endings, closer to the surface. So you're stimulating them, but then also the nerve endings of the vaginal lining are actually going to be awoken. They're going to be awakened. And if there's some unresolved trauma in there, it's going to help release that, unresolved trauma so that you restore sensation. Like there's all kinds of things that we can do to increase the sensation of the vagina. And with one of the primary ones, slowing sex down. Do not rush to the finish line. And I found this, even in lesbian communities, same-sex relationships. I was in same-sex relationships with women, and they didn't know anything more about my vagina than a dude did, right? Because of the sex education that we're exposed to. So just because someone has a vagina doesn't mean that they know about, the 40-minute arousal cycle for other vagina owners. We can't presume that. So for your female identified partners, both of you being educated about how your your sexual pleasure organs work and the amount of time that it can take to reach full arousal so that you can have vaginal orgasms, you can have cervical orgasms, you can have A-spot orgasms, you can have anal orgasms. Bring those to the party too. Bring it all to the party is what we're saying.
You may not be ready to have your yoni touched until 40 minutes in.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
You may not be having a massage. It may be the sensual experience of having all your other erogenous zones that exist outside of your genitals stimulated so that arousal can happen inside your yoni, and then go in the yoni and check it out. Like, it doesn't even have to be yoni centered. Yeah. Just get there and give it time. Take an hour to do all sorts of other things. Make it a game. Yeah. And be like, oh, now we actually can touch genitals. So exciting.
And all of those are reasons why the self-exploration, self-pleasure practices in authentic Tantra make such a difference. So the woman actually knows her own body, what feels good to her, what stroke, what pressure, where on her body. So, and then she's learning how to actually relax and rest into that pleasure and expand that pleasure and see where she is on her pleasure scale, and build it and let it come back down. And, so she's really getting to know herself in a way that you need to know yourself before you can expect someone else to be able to turn you on and turn you out, and you don't know yourself in that way.
I love that you brought that piece in, because yes, again, one of the ways that we as female identified people are conditioned in the society is that our orgasm is our partner's responsibility. And our orgasm is for our partner, as opposed to, again, claiming our power and claiming responsibility for our own pleasure and exploring our own vaginas. Like, again, there's, okay, you can like stroke off your clitoris and have your little, climactic orgasm, but there's a lot of conditioning against us putting things inside our vaginas on our own outside of for the male gaze. So never underestimate the power, of how we're conditioned that our pussy is for their pleasure ultimately. And the resistance, the unconscious and subtle resistance that builds in us in exploring our own bodies and exploring our vaginas. Like, for me and so many of the other women that I've spoken with, like I spent 30 years of my life thinking that my vagina was for my partner, that I didn't have a right to put things in my own vagina, that it was their territory. So sitting down and doing masturbation where I actually put things inside of my own vagina was terrifying at first. And yet, as you said, Karen, it's huge to have that space and to have that, that self-love and that empowerment that comes from knowing like, oh, okay, so I've been stimulating my clitoris, I've been touching this. Now, like Rosie said, I'm going to put a finger at my yoni. Oh, wow, it sucked it right in because now I'm ready. Wow, I have so much more sensation after 20 minutes as opposed to 2 minutes. Oh my God, I'm not broken. Like, that's the biggest thing, is we're not broken. Whoever sent this question, your vagina is not broken because you're not feeling lots of sensation. Your vagina is functioning perfectly. It's letting you know that it needs more time and it may need some TLC. It may need some attention from you in order for it to blossom fully. Yeah, preach. And we love the modality that we teach. We reference authentic Tantra. We love our modality because it's so transformative and so healing. And we're not the only people who have wisdom to share. So, exploring and finding tools and techniques and people, trusted sources with whom you resonate, that can support you on this journey, that can support you in this exploration. Having a safe container is hugely, hugely important, especially when we're talking about releasing trauma, which 1 in 4 of us yoni owners are carrying around our sexuality, if not more than 1 in 4. So having a safe container, having trusted support, all of that is really important as you embark on this exploration. Yay. Awesome. All right. So one more, I think we've got time for one more quick. So let's see, a former client, COVID has resulted in feelings of isolation for a lot of people. How can a single menopausal person maintain a healthy libido during these times? Wow. I mean, that's a big question, even when we're not doing COVID, but anyone want to tackle that? How can a single menopausal person, yoni owner, cultivate and maintain their libido in isolation? What are your thoughts?
Wow. Well, if you've been listening to what we've been talking about, the most important thing during this isolative time is connection with yourself. Menopausal women have a tendency to have a low libido if they don't pay attention, if they don't offer that attention to themselves, if they don't make the effort to make the connection, because we think, oh, I don't feel like it, I'm experiencing some pain, or I'm having some dryness, I don't want to touch myself. That's when you should. And I don't like to say should, that's a shaming word. That's when you could touch yourself.
Yeah. So use, instead of, so just being mindful, this is like a mindfulness practice, and like, oh, I have aversion. Aversion's a little red flag, maybe indicating that there's something to look at here.
Yeah.
Sexuality is cultivated.
Yeah.
Right? We're also brought up to think like, oh, some people are sexy people and some people are just not sexy people, right? Some people have libido, some people don't. That is just utter bullshit. We build it and we continue to cultivate it, and through, if we do that, then we can have very healthy sex lives long, like until we die, hopefully, but well into old age. It doesn't have to shut down at any time, but you do have to work on it.
And I would say thank you for that, Rosie, because I would say that in terms of, I'm not menopausal yet, but definitely like perimenopausal, getting the signs and symptoms, right? And perimenopause can last for years. But what I can say is that my libido changed. Right. And so like, at a certain age, I was used to my libido feeling like an itch I had to scratch. And it changed. And so I would think, oh, well, my libido is gone. But it's not that it was gone. It's changed. Like what my needs have changed. What I want for my sexual experience has matured in some ways. And so it's not, sometimes it's like an itch to scratch, right? But it's more like, I experience it more like a smoldering fire that wants me to blow on it. Yeah.
Ooh, that's just sexy.
Right? I know, like, that's beautiful.
What you're talking about, Rosie, is that cultivation. A smoldering fire will go out if you don't blow on it, if you don't feed it, so to speak. So again, claiming responsibility for our own sexual experience, and like, oh, okay, so I've got a smoldering fire here. Do I want to add some fuel to it? Do I want to stoke it and stroke it? Do I want to make it burn more brightly?
Yeah. I would also recommend movement. Exactly. Yeah. Davey has an incredible tantric dance video that's amazing. But just moving those hips, and make a playlist, or just listen to music that gets you moving, because first of all, just moving that way makes you feel sexy. Like you can't move your hips, and thrust and circles and all that stuff and not feel sexy. And not only does it make you feel sexier, it's actually making you sexier. Yes. So your pelvic floor is actually being nourished and nurtured. And so it's really bringing you to a place, the movement itself can help move toxic energy out. It can help to, like if you've experienced some kind of trauma, it helps to move all of that out. So, it doesn't just make you feel better, you like actually are better. And it really like kind of that juiciness that you're experiencing, you're feeling when you're dancing or moving your body in that way is what's actually happening in your body, in your pelvic floor, in your yoni.
Beautiful. So all these avenues to cultivate our sexual fuel, our sexual charge, whether we're alone, single, isolated, all of that. Unfortunately, we have to close today's session, and we will be back next month with more for you. So please make sure you send us your questions, whether it's to connect@authentictantra.com or each of us as individuals. Everyone, as we sign off, give a shout out to what your website is. Karen, where can people find out more about you besides our website?
ExploreTantra.com.
All right, Rosie Bitts.
RosieBitts.com.
Sequieta.
SimplyTantra.com.
Beautiful. And Lucia.
It's embodied elements with a -wp.com.
Beautiful. And we will have links to all of their sites under this video and on our blog. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Thank you for joining us every evening. Thank you to my incredible panel of highly experts. And we look forward to catching you next week for another episode of Sex is Medicine. Much love, many blessings. You've been listening to Sex is Medicine with Devi Ward Erickson, your #1 resource for holistic sex education. You can listen to and subscribe to Sex is Medicine on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Just search Sex is Medicine with Devi Ward. Stay connected with me and my guests on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter @Authentic Tantra, and learn how you can use Tantra as medicine to heal, awaken, and empower every area of your life at AuthenticTantra.com. Make sure to tune in to Sex is Medicine every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific on Contact Talk Radio Network, and join our watch party every Thursday evening on Facebook @Authentic Tantra. We look forward to you joining us next week for another episode of Sex is Medicine with Devi Ward.